I think you said something about using a nuclear weapon. I have questions about that. Maybe Jeff can answer that. I don't know if there's such thing as a small or a minor nuclear situation, or if it's always just the big boom. But I believe, if I'm wrong, correct me. I thought I heard Armin say something about a nuclear response.
I was talking about it yesterday. I was talking about not in response to the American soldiers being killed, but also I don't think that's on the table. But we were talking about it from if we were talking about the Kukolang Mountain or the Pickaxe Mountain and the enriched uranium facility that is under there. That facility is so deep that the bunker busters would not be able to reach it. So there's only basically four options on taking that facility. One is a tactical nuclear weapon, which is so many most people say that's not on the table. So we're crossing that one out. And a tactical nuclear weapon, you're right, Sherry, is not like that big mushroom cloud thingy. It's it's much limited, much more limited. Um, so yes, it's not like atomic bomb. It's not just like that thing that takes over a city. Sometimes when they say tactical nuclear weapon, it means that it's a lot smaller. So that's not on the table. The other one is like a ground operation to take the a special ops going in and destroying the facility. That is also very unlikely given how risky that situation would be. The third option would be a deal. That is also very unlikely because yeah, I'm with Jeff is agreeing with this. Yes, that is very unlikely to be able to get that done with a deal. I mean, even if you do get a deal, that would just basically mean that the Islamic Republic will continue finding another site to enrich uranium, even if you could. The fourth option, which is the only option, in my opinion, I think Jeff agrees with this as well, is regime change. Regime change is basically getting rid of the Islamic Republic. This by itself demonstrates that regime change is a necessity for Americans as well. It's not just for Iranians because basically there's no other way to make sure the Islamic Republic doesn't get access to nuclear weapons. Does that answer your question, Sherry?
Yes, that's what I was. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I always thought we had a smaller nuclear option other than just the big mushroom cloud thing. But anyway, yes, yes, sir. You answered it. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Good question. Okay, so I think I'm managing the list, I guess. Noah is next.
Yeah, I would also add that I think a same response should be in case whenever Israeli soldiers are killed as well. But I also agree with everything you say on this, Armin. But I just wanted to add that part.
Yeah, I mean every country with a legitimate government has an army to the whole point of an army is to advertise your deterrence capabilities. Armies are not supposed to armies are not there to bring war. Armies are there to stop war. Armies are there so that your enemies know the consequences of bringing war to your border. When other people start wage war against you, you respond in war against them, not just to end that war that they started, but also to show to everybody else what you're capable of, so that they think twice before they trying the same. So obviously, like not just like the United States has the responsibility to demonstrate its deterrence capabilities when a war is brought to it. Israel has that responsibility as well. And Israel has actually been very good in demonstrating that every time anybody decides not to just kill Israeli soldiers, but any Israeli civilian as well. In fact, Israel is very famous at doing this. Israel, goes like it was during a sports team of Israelis were taken hostage and killed. And over the years, Israel managed to go in and find every single person that was responsible for that, and they assassinated every single one of them. even though they were in many different countries around the world. So Israel has shown to everybody what happens to you if you go after Israelis. So if there is no like no, the enemies of Israel know that if they target Israeli one way or another, Israel will find them and it will eliminate them. So Israel is very successful at that. All right. So the next person is Jeffrey. Amu Jeff.
What's up, Armin? Yeah, so I mean, very much regime changes where it's got to go. You're right about, I mean, just in keeping with the assessment that I provided yesterday on your yesterday's show, if there is no response, then it will have an eroding effect on U.S. deterrence, not just in one theater, across all theaters. So there has to be some response. I mean, we're already engaging in increased responses now, although I would contend it should be a massive response. That actively hunts down and kills the regime, not just counterforce, not just taking out like a couple of boats, although that has to happen for operational reasons, hunting down the regime remnants and killing them. The idea, as well as the repressive elements within Iran, the Mullah regime remnants, repressive elements in Iran, to give Iranian people the best shake at, taking back their country and liberating it from the regime that has occupied it since the tragedy of '79. As far as nuclear weapons are concerned, that's true. There's a couple of other additional options. One was, orbital bombardment. That's actually something we looked at vis-a-vis Elon Musk's heavy lift rocket. You can apply nuclear weapons in two different ways. One is like the guy admiral you were talking about, who was like, I don't know whoever that expert said, there's only two options, more two options. So you can have a surface detonation of a tactical nuclear weapon. That would be very bad. Or you could use variable yield warheads on a robust nuclear earth penetrator that we designed for specifically these kinds of issues with his hard and deeply buried targets and hard and deeply buried target defeat program. Actually, President Trump in his first term greenlit and spun that up again, modifying certain warheads. If I remember correctly, it's Bravo, the B61-11, which was modified from the B61-7. I think its yield settings is between 300 tons and a couple of, I forgot how many kilotons. In any case, so you dial it down to 300 tons and you penetrate down. The idea is to couple more energy to the surrounding target and or area underground. And so you'd contain a lot of the, you're not going to have like tons of radioactive fallout. Still, you'd be crossing a moratorium with that. There's positives and negatives to it. Ideally, it shakes out exactly as Armin had said, and I think as everybody here has consistently and rightly pushed for, which is the best way to deny the regime access to WMDs is that the regime has to go. These people are never going to the probability they're ever going to have sustained positive behavioral change is very low. That's because they're pseudo-theologically motivated. This is not the same as fighting, North Korea or Russia or China. The Mullah regime, these are people who pray to the 12th Mahdi and throw little love notes down the well with Ahmadiyya dinner jacket and all the other wackadoodle fuckers that are there, right? Mooshhead and the Ayatollah and all the rest of these lunatics. They do not frame their position of gain or loss physically. They view it metaphysically. There is really no way. How do you deter that? What argument do you have with someone who thinks that they have to rape, kill, and destroy so they can get 72 virgins, goats, whatever? It'd be funny if they were all transgender. That'd be hilarious. Like gender anyway. It's not like you go, well, if I add a little extra money and we carry the two, they don't give a shit about any of that. Ultimately, it's not going to, they'll take it because they view material wealth as a means to an end. That doesn't mean it's going to manifest itself in changing what they define their desired end state to be. They have to go. Spot on.
Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot that I'm keeping the list. Thank you, Jeff. Nets. Oh, I forgot the pin.
Hi. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I completely agree with Jeff that the only long-term solution is regime change. And I also agree with Armin that, you know, it's important to do things quickly because if we don't, then it weakens, it weakens how scared people are of us. And so I was thinking about this question of, well, there are limits to what we're willing to commit and what action could be done very quickly that might look like we're taking the idea of regime change seriously. And so I just had an idea and I wanted to throw out my idea and let people like Jeff tell me why it's completely impossible. Uh, but I looked at a map this morning, and of course, the Strait of Hormuz is pretty narrow, and the coastline near the Strait of Hormuz, depending on how you define it, is relatively short. But the entire southern coast of Iran is quite long. And most of it is maybe not as strategically important as the Strait of Hormuz. So you can't imagine that the IRGC are actually defending all of it very well. Um, and so why not say that as a response to American soldiers being killed, we're going to occupy some spot on the southern coast of Iran. I don't know what spot that should be exactly, and certainly it should be the spot where they're least expecting us to do it, so that it will be easy. Of course, once one does it, then one has to defend it and so on. But that's the kind of thing that air power is good for. Like if a lot of Iranian troops start moving towards this spot, then I think there are things the US can do. And the other advantage of trying to do something like that is that if you're interested in arming the Iranians, then you'll have a spot from which to arm Iranians. If you want to vet the Iranians that you're going to arm, you can vet them there any way that you want. But why can't the U.S. say that if our soldiers are being killed, then we need to start moving towards towards a regime change, and we'll find some spot where we'll start, and we're happy to escalate it. And if it turns out that we need to make that spot larger over time we can, and maybe it can be a part of Iran that is now under the control of a transitional government uh, of Reza Pahlavi, and um, and it can be the beginning of the regime change. We use it as a beachhead for the regime change. So I want everyone to now yell at me and tell me why this is impossible.
Okay, so before we go to Amu Jeff, in response to this, I wanted to take a crack at this, and so Amu Jeff could respond to both of us, um, and maybe he will yell at both of us, and tell us both we're idiots. Yeah, this is why what you're saying. This is what I was thinking about Chabahar, which is another port in southeast of Iran. So the issue is not a city that they didn't think about so that they don't have troops there, because their main way that they're going to defend is with drones and missiles. Like if Americans come and take over, then they know if they send troops, the Americans will be able to slaughter them, right? They're so much better at that than the Americans. So if they send soldiers there, the soldiers will be there to get slaughtered, right? So instead of sending soldiers there, when the Americans take over a port, they will just try to target the Americans there with drones and missiles. That's their so even if they go into a city that is they didn't expect, as long as it's close to their, to places where they have launchers and drone capability, that the Americans would be exposed, right? So Chabahar is a good candidate because it's far away from the mountains, Zagros Mountains. It's far away from the forest. It's far away because if you have places where you could basically attack the American soldiers in, then the air support could take out your launchers or your drone, wherever you're launching the drones. But you need to keep them in mountainous areas and forests and in places that you already have holes in there where these things could go back into their holes. If you go southeast Iran in Chabahar, then Chabahar is so far away from all of these facilities, so it's easier to defend the American soldiers if they take over Chabahar, right? Because it's farther away, right? Um, the problem with Chabahar is that it's less important than Bandar Abbas. So if you take over Bandar Abbas, you manage to get a much more strategic port. That is like his IRGC Navy Central, and also it's a place where the Islamic Republic launches attacks in the Strait of Hormuz, and it's the most important port in Iran because most of the import exports go through Bandar Abbas. So if you take Bandar Abbas, you're basically also taking the most important window for breathing economically. Like you're suffocating the Islamic Republic if you take Bandar Abbas. So strategically, it's a much more important port to take, but it's a more difficult one to hold because it's still closer to so many areas where the IRGC could basically shower the Americans with drones and missiles and stuff. But Chabahar is a less strategic port, but it's a safer place to take over. And also, another point that you had regarding the transitional government and Princess of Pahlavi and his team, that's whether you start with Bandar Abbas or Chabahar or somewhere else. That's in my opinion should be the plan. It's not that for the U.S. Army to expand and go into Iran, but I think it would be more strategic is to just use whatever that city to bring in Princess of Pahlavi's team, start vetting, training, and expanding an Iranian army, and the Iranian army will start expanding from that city from south and start going north. And you don't even go north first. You go east and west, in my opinion, because if you go north, you basically exposing this newly formed Iranian army. But if you go east and west, then you could get the entire southern shore of of Iran, basically everything that it touches the Persian Gulf. And if you take the entire southern shore, that means the Islamic Republic has now lost all of its access to its oil and gas. So instead of going north and marching towards Tehran, just stay south, take all of the south, and suffocate the Islamic Republic because now they don't have access to their revenue. Does that make sense? Before we go to Ahmed Jeff? Oh,
It sounds great to me.
okay.
I think just any move towards freeing even a part of Iran is the kind of move we should be making.
Awesome. Okay, so if you approve, we'll send it to the Pentagon right now. Thank you for the approval. All right, Ahmed Jeff. Here's a
So
connection.
again, it's pretty. I understand the positions. So even if they're at Bandar Abbas, Armin's right. It's not about ground forces. You could put close air support and all that. And again, like U.S. troops would absolutely rape the regime remnants in the ear pussy if they try to get into a straight up fight with those guys. With my fellow soldiers, wow, they're going to go through them like they're not even there, which is why they wouldn't do it, because they're going to do exactly what Armin said, exactly what Ukraine's Minister of Defense warned about with regards to the impact of attritionable mass-produced attritionable long-range drones that are enabled or enhanced with AI and machine vision and the rest of it. It doesn't matter if it's Western or Eastern traditional approaches towards military operations. If you're above ground and you're seen or a fixed target, you're dead. He said it's not even just ineffectual, it's tantamount to suicide. So, yeah, you could take over that area and it would definitely provide a lot of different advantages to do exactly the other things you're looking to do, which is almost surely why the regime remnants has, like, I don't know, each one of those areas zeroed in. Like, I get what you were saying. They're not defending. This is actually that was actually some really good, that was a good question. They're not defending the entire coastline. That's true. And you can use any one of these places as a potential landing zone for a maritime force. And that becomes a beachhead for us to start doing operations inside, to do things like vet and all that, which would absolutely have to happen. Here's the issue with regards to the missile and drones, right? So in Bandar Abbas, between the areas where, that have been identified and or mentioned in open intelligence sources about where the Mullah regime remnants would launch ballistic missiles or Shahed class drones, the amount of flight time for ballistic missiles from those areas to Bandar Abbas, 1 to 8 minutes, right? Drone, about 30 minutes to about 3.5 hours, depending on where it is and what kind of engine they have and all that. If you're talking about Chabahar, it's a little longer still. You're not going to have the idea of putting greater distance between potential identified points of launch and the point of impact definitely gives you more time because the flight time's longer to react or respond or get under cover. That's true. Still, it's they'll still probably get them off, right? We're actively hunting them now. Why? Because the regime remnants is getting backfilled by Putin, Chi-Coms, and North Koreans, particularly with things like transport rector launchers and things that they use to like weld launch fucking platforms inside civilian trucks to launch Shaheads. And the fact that those missiles have been upgraded thanks to the no thanks, from our side to the Chinese Communist Party, the solid fuel ballistic missiles, which means they're stored ready to go. Right? They can come out, fire, and shoot and scoot very quickly. So yeah, we can definitely track where they're at and then hammer wherever the fuck they go. You would have to probably have CAS operating all the time over a run in those areas, like have B1s and B52s and all that, just loitering with like brilliant guided munitions. So as soon as you come out, boop, we're gonna just ball peen hammer you in the forehead. Ideally, arming the Iranian people is the best way to go. There's different ways to do that. I understand why Armin wants to do the way he does. Now, probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably because Armin had to see what those motherfuckers did in January. And he doesn't want to see that again. That's why Armin works so hard, right? To get rid of all the shit in your head that those bastards did. I get it. My approach is train them outside. Either way, His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi, headed up transitionary government, needs to be involved. Ideally, my response, what I sent up the chain again in response to 2 U.S. soldiers being killed, is a combination of 3 lines of effort. One is an expanded 5x5, so it's 7x9, 2 additional waves. They expressly target the besiege and IRGC repressive elements. All of their command and control, all their leadership, even below the lieutenant level, all of their headquarters down to the neighborhood headquarters, all destroyed. The other one is Operation Sovereign Tide, which is you name His Highness Prince Reza Pahlavi's headed up transitionary government as the official government in exile, and then you liberate the Dark Fleet tankers everywhere. So that's about 130 million barrels of oil. Sell that disproportionately to U.S. and our allies because we should be, at market prices, maybe with a little bit of a discount to offset the operational costs. And that kills 3 birds with one stone. It denies the Mullah regime its oil revenue. It denies the Chinese Communist Party the heavy sour crude for their teapot shit. It gives the transitionary government roughly between $10 and $14 billion in revenue, and it lowers our gas prices. Outstanding. The other one is to arm the Iranian people in resistance with regards to the Track 2 material support strategy outline. Each company of unconventional fighters equipped is about $1.2 million, and training them will be for 20,000 fighters, 87 weeks. Very much at the end of it, they will be sans Skynet or Delta Force, the most lethal combatants on the fucking planet. They will be organized in 156 to 158 companies whose training centers around specific cities, and then further broke down to 8-man hunter-killer teams so they can swarm through Iran like sharks amongst prey and hunting down and killing those besieged child-murdering fucks. Within 3 to 6 months, they're all dead. And then they become the core of Neo-Savant so that, Iranians never have to suffer this kind of brutality again, or at least they have a good shot at it. That's kind of where we would go. Really good thinking, though. Like, I understand. That was a really good question. Thank you. And very good commentary, Harman.
My name is Armin Navabi. I'm an Iranian political analyst with decades of experience fighting the Islamic regime inside and outside of Iran. Make sure you follow me for more, and also make sure you join our discussion group. I'm there almost every single day. Come talk to me there and the rest of the people there in our group calls. It's a great place to meet and talk to people who like talking about politics. The link is in the description and or in the bio. You could also get there by scanning the QR code on the screen. See you there.